This might just look like a boring empty glass box to you, but soon it will be a beautiful bioactive vivarium. I'm going to bring you along and show you exactly how to build this. So starting off just by getting everything cleaned up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to install a waterproof fan up at the top just to get the airflow going inside of this terrarium and make sure that the plants and animals are going to be nice and healthy. Now that that is installed, we just need to do something about this cable and wire management. So I'm just going to use some wires and tie it up to the top. And I think that looks a lot better. It's going to be really inconspicuous up there. Next, we need to install our misting head. I already have a Mist King system in my other terrarium that's next to it. So we're just going to kind of install this head and get them connected all together eventually. So just drilled through the screen top, and we're gonna punch this through. It's just a little bulkhead fitting that will hold these mister heads in place. So pretty simple there to install. I think it looks really good in there next to the fan, and I think it's going to be pretty inconspicuous. Here's a little preview. Also, I've got a new timer for our lighting system, so that should be easy enough. Now my backdrop that I'm using is a cork bark, but it came in all warped like this, which isn't going to stick well. So I'm going to try to fix it by soaking it down with water for a little bit and then seeing if we can get it to fix that warping situation going on. But actually, I made it worse when I got it wet. So yeah, that's not good. Let's put some weights on it. And Sam, will you get out of the way? I'm trying to show them. Okay, so I got lots of weights on it to see if we can get this thing to straighten back out. In the meantime, I did pick up a second piece of this cork bark tile because I decided I want to put it on the sides. Now, after soaking and drying, it does look a lot better. I think it will at least be usable because we're going to have to use silicone to stick this to the back of the terrarium. So I'm just going to lay the terrarium down on its back like this because that's going to make it easier to actually weigh it down so it will glue properly. So yeah, lots of silicone on here. And I'm going to put some onto the cork bark as well. I thought it was interesting that it's basically particle board on the back of this cork tile. So let's get that into place. I thought it was nice that the tile came pre-cut to the size that I needed, so that was really good. I won't have to cut this one, but I will have to cut the ones on the sides to make them fit better. So we're just going to weigh this down to make sure that it has good contact with the silicone. And I'm just going to dry fit the side pieces in here right now just to make sure I like the way that it looks before we repeat the process for each side. So it's going to take time to get all the sides glued into place and cured. Now you can see this was the piece that I ended up warping even worse. So I'm going to have to fill in these gaps with some expanding foam, which I needed to do anyway. So we're going to start that process now, and that's going to help hold it into place even better. Now the foaming process is super satisfying. I highly recommend it if you haven't used expanding foam before. So just remember that it will grow and it is very sticky. You don't want to get this on your skin or clothing. So use gloves if you are working with this stuff. Fast forward to all three sides are on now and we have most of the foaming done. I think it looks really cool already with this cork bark, and it's going to be really nice to grow plants on and somewhere for the animals to climb up. Now here I've stacked up some bricks and rocks to where I want the soil level to be because it's time to work on the hardscaping. I found two really cool pieces of spider wood at PetSmart, and I'm going to try to put them in here and have cool places to grow plants and have climbing areas. Just got to figure out how to fit them together, and then I'm going to hold them in place with some expanding foam once again to make sure that they're nice and secure. I really loved how these pieces fit together. It almost looks like a tree that was already growing there. So we've got it all foamed in. I taped it in place in the meantime until this foam cures all the way. And then it's just going to be a matter of carving the foam and hiding the foam. But it's just looking super cool already. I can see all kinds of potential going on here. And the soil level is going to go all the way up to the bottom of this stick. Now, since I'm adding some arboreal species in here, I decided to add this vine wrapping around some of the sticks, just giving them extra places to climb on. It's somewhat of a rubberized material that's easy to work with, so I like that a lot. Now it's time to cover up this foam after we have kind of carved it into the shape that we want it to be. Some people use Drylock and paint it over the foam, but I just wanted to put silicone on there and cover it with sphagnum moss. So I'm going to show you how I did that. And it's pretty easy. You just kind of squeeze it on there, rub it all around, and then you just grab your dry sphagnum moss and start sticking it to there. So not a hard process, but it looks really good and just kind of hides all of that black color and makes it look more natural. I think you're going to like when this all comes together. Now, aside from masking those transitional areas, the sphagnum moss also holds moisture quite well, and it's going to be a great place for climbing plants to dig in. So I've got all the sides done now. It's time to just start working on this back area in between all of these crevices in the wood and covering up all that black foam. It's going to look really, really good. And yeah, here it is. So we are almost done. It's time to put some substrate in here, but first we got to do a drainage layer. And that's going to consist of leca, which is lightweight expanded clay, aggregate, clay pellets, and I've got a nice thick layer in there, about 1.5 inches, and that's just going to catch any excess moisture and help keep the humidity nice and high in here. Now, I don't want the soil to get down into the leca, so we're going to put a window screen there to just kind of separate those layers. And then it's time to start mixing up the soil. So I'm going to use chocolate milk. Just kidding. This is the water that was from the clay aggregate. So I think that the clay particles are going to make for a nice rich additives to the potting soil. So I'm starting with Happy Frog potting soil, and then I'm adding in this rosy soil, which is a biochar based soil. And I think that's going to give us a lot of nice nutrition and drainage and also good little microbes in the soil. I also had this bag of pecan shells, so I'm going to throw some of those in there, and that's going to kind of work like you would see with orchid bark, kind of giving some void space in the soil. I'm also going to be adding in some more long fiber sphagnum moss, and let's get to mixing, which is a really fun process. And it's also kind of hard to judge how much I'm going to need, but finish up this first batch, and as I'm looking at it though, it looks like it's still, I don't know, a little bit dense. So I want to make it maybe just a little bit chunkier because I want to make sure that there's lots of airflow down to the plant roots. So I'm also going to add some activated charcoal, some orchid mix, and a little bit extra of the long fiber sphagnum moss. So let's get that all mixed up. And yeah, I think that is the ticket. That looks super good to me. So let's get it filled up into the terrarium. Now, what I did was I sloped it from the back to the front, and I think that's going to give it some really nice depth and just kind of make for a really cool area to plant. So what we're going to do is give you one last look before the plants go in. It's already looking awesome, but it's about to get better. I picked up this really big fig cutting. This is creeping fig from our greenhouse. So I'm going to secure it to the walls using these little staples. And also look at this tiny little hammer that I got from the hardware store. It's so adorable. Now, this part was extremely tedious. I was having to nail or tack on each individual vine, but I think it's going to look really, really cool and make it look like this terrarium has been there for a long time. Now, the only thing that I'm worried about is since this wasn't a rooted cutting, I'm concerned that it might die. But that's a risk I'm willing to take because even if it does die, it's just going to give it more depth and character. But look how it turned out. It looks like this terrarium has already been here and established for months or maybe even years. It's looking really cool. So let's get some more plants in there and make it look even better. Now back there I've got a money tree towards the back, and that's going to be kind of the main big character piece that's in here. And then now I'm just kind of filling in with smaller stuff like peperomias and different types of begonias and some ivies, but I'm really digging how it's looking so far. There's even a tiny little Tradescantia in there, and I'm going to be adding more plants as we go. This is just kind of the first batch, but I do want this to eventually be really full looking. Next, we need some leaf litter, so I went out into the yard and I grabbed some magnolia leaves and pecan leaves and oak leaves and little sticks. So let's just get those kind of dispersed all over the place because this is going to be bioactive. Oh, by the way, you see my little T-Rex skull I put in there? I thought that was really fun. But these leaves and sticks are going to make good food source for the springtails and isopods that I'm putting in here into this bioactive terrarium. So we're almost done, folks. I am really liking how this is looking. I think the lizards are gonna like this a whole lot, but wow, this is it's looking nice. And here you can see it next to my old terrarium, which now looks, well, kind of puny and sad next to the new one. So I may end up redoing that one in the future. But last step here is we are hooking up the misting system and testing it out and making sure that it's going to be all pointed in the right direction and giving us good coverage for all of these plants in here. And it's looking really, really nice, giving me some nice rainforest vibes here. So, all right, I think that's it. All that's left to do now is to let these plants get established for several days, and then we're going to be adding in our isopods and springtails, and eventually we'll put the larger animals in here and let them enjoy their beautiful new home.